Thank you for coming today. We're going to call this meeting of the Georgia Senate Public Safety Committee to order. We thank you all for coming. We're going to begin the way we always do with a prayer, and I'm going to call upon our very own Senator Kim Jackson if she would offer a word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Holy and loving God, we give you thanks this day for each person that serves to work and maintain our safety in this great state. We pray for all people who are in uniform, for their families, for their loved ones. May all be well. We also pray for all individuals in the state that we might all be safe, that we might care well for one another, and to create a world where everyone feels free and healthy. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We're going to be doing a couple of things today. We are going to hear three bills. We're affectionately calling this Senator Randy Robertson Day because he'll have those three bills. But prior to that, very excited to have some special guests here today that are going to address us and provide an update. As most of you knew, we had a new investiture of police chief for the city of Atlanta. And Chief Sherborne, you've been a beacon of light for your department for all the years you have served, but certainly your approach and your work of camaraderie with whether it be other local agencies, state or federal partners, gives you a reputation that everyone admires and respects. So thank you. So if you wouldn't mind coming down here and talking to us, we have a podium right over there if you want to talk to so the folks at home can see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And Senators, I always want to thank you for your service, being willing to serve in an elected capacity for our great state, and then also serving on this committee, which I hold near and dear of the men and women that protect our state. So thank you. Mr. Chairman, I do have the pleasure of serving as the Chief of Police of the Atlanta Police Department. I'm beginning my 21st year with that organization. I've had the opportunity I live right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've had the opportunity to serve in a number of assignments from patrol and investigations to community engagement and community policing, as well as running our training academy. During that time, I did have the opportunity to lead the units that combated gangs, guns, and drugs in the city. And so when I began last year and met with the mayor, his priorities were public safety for the city of Atlanta and to smartly attack those elements that are bringing crime into our city. And so you have seen that to be a cornerstone of Mayor Dickens' administration, as well as the Atlanta Police Department, that we're focusing on the things that are causing crime in our city. Last year, in the month of May, we saw at that point our homicide rate was trending at 50% up where it was last year, and that was a very high concern for us. And we saw that there was a heavy influence in the narcotics trade, as well as gangs in the city and guns in the wrong hands. It was seeing that increase in shootings in the city. So in June, we refocused our efforts on attacking the gangs that were present in the city of Atlanta and Fulton County across the region, as well as targeting the drug dealing operations and gun possession that was driving the crime. And we formed a partnership with the Attorney General of Georgia, the U.S. Attorney of the Northern District, as well as the Georgia State Patrol, the ATF, the Fulton County Sheriff, and a number of other agencies to start focusing on specific geographic areas of the city that we could tell was driving our crime, as well as focusing on individuals that we could see that were engaged in that effort. And as we ended the year, we were pleased to start seeing a reduction of the homicide rate over the previous months, and we ended the year with a 6% increase in the homicide rate instead of the 50% that we were slated to have as we ended the beginning of the year. Now, that is the hard work of many, many men and women that aren't present here today, Mr. Chairman, that brought that work about. And we had undercover investigations that were working. The district attorney of Fulton County was a key part of that as we targeted. And one of the tactics we used, we had a gang unit that was giving us incredible intelligence of what was driving our crime, but we felt that there was a better use of the state's anti-gang statute that could be brought to bear to start bringing around the trend changes that we wanted to see. So every investigator of the Atlanta Police Department, over 200, were actually charged to be trained in the gang statute, and the district attorney of Fulton County undertook that training. And as we moved through the summer months, where we saw a gang influence in a car theft, where we saw a gang influence in a drug operation or a burglary, we brought the gang charge then. And just to give you a statistic, in the year 2021, the Atlanta Police Department brought the gang charge, the state gang statute, 69 times. In the year of 2022, we brought the gang charge 259 times. At the moment that it was most needed to be able to impact the influence we were seeing. We also, during this past year, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, undertook two operations. An Operation Heat Wave, which occurred during the summer months, and Operation Fall Frontier, where we partnered with the District Attorney's Office, the Sheriff, the Attorney General of the state, the U.S. Attorney, the GBI, the FBI, the Georgia State Patrol, and the ATF, as well as agencies that touch the City of Atlanta and universities. And we focused again on the geographic areas that we wanted to target on and individuals that we knew were pushing crime in the city. During those two details, the first detail, we made 41 key arrests of individuals that were involved in gang activity or drug dealing. We brought the gang charge 30 times for a specific act, and we took 19 guns out of the hands of felons that were possessing them. And when we looked at the time that we had Operation Heat Wave, back to the exact same weeks of 2021, we saw that aggravated assaults dropped 26%. The act of robbery, which is the second highest motivator for homicides in our city, dropped 14%, and the homicide rate dropped 29% over the previous year for the exact same time, just by being in the right spaces and targeting the right individuals. That was successful, so we repeated it again in the fall. Again, going after certain individuals and going after certain areas. During that time frame, with our same partners, 74 key arrests occurred. 15 of those arrests were referred for federal prosecution. The gang charge was brought 4 times, and we were able to take 26 firearms out of the hands of gang members. And so those, Mr. Chairman, were some of the influence we were able to see. Then we doubled down on our enforcement of narcotics. If a city anywhere in the state of Georgia has a drug dealing operation occurring on their street, be it an apartment building or a home, it is a ticking time bomb for violence. Because part of the business model for running a drug operation is to have a lot of guns present to be able to protect that location should individuals come to take your ill-gotten gains or your drugs, and you may need those guns to push your drug operations. In 2022, the Atlanta Police Department, working also with our agencies, removed $2.8 million worth of street value of drugs off our streets in the city. That is compared in 2020 when it was just $597,000 worth of street value removed. Also, we took cash out of the home, physical cash of almost $500,000 out of homes, where in the year 2020 we took $214,000. And then in 2020, we seized 74 guns out of the hands of drug dealing operations. We did that 111 times in 2022, and I think this is very telling that in 2020 we shut down 45 drug dealing operations, where in 2022 we shut down 75, meaning every 5th day in the city of Atlanta last year we shut down a drug dealing operation. And if you go to our social media, you will see photographs of the high caliber of firearms that were being taken out of those locations in every corner of the city. And when we go back and look at the influences of earlier in the year of what was pushing our homicides and aggravated assaults, we started to see those influenced by drug dealing operations fall, and we started to see those being influenced by gangs starting to fall. Homicides in the city, the highest motivating rate was escalating dispute. Members of this committee, we saw individuals lose their lives with the most ridiculous manners, the way a sandwich was prepared at a restaurant, the way someone parked, perceived or actual infidelity. And so we saw a lot of fights going on where individuals were producing firearms into those fights. And we started to see a less of an influence around the gang-influenced ones as well as the drug ones. And we still continue to ask for individuals where they have the ability to influence a escalating situation to please do so. And then as we stand here this morning, we just completed our first year of 2023. Groundhog Day is tomorrow. But I will tell you that as we looked at 2022, unfortunately 16 individuals lost their lives in the city of Atlanta last January from homicide. As we ended the first month, 5 had done so in the city. And so we were starting to see an influence, we believe, in the partnerships we have built with the state of Georgia, the partnerships that we have reestablished with our federal partners, and just the incredible work that is being done by the men and women of the Atlanta Police Department. We are an intelligence-driven law enforcement agency. We want to make sure that when we fight crime in a community, we do it with the community, and we do not damage our trust in that community in any way also, and that when we go anywhere in the city, we know who we're looking for, and we know the trend that we're combating, and just the incredible camera and license plate reader infrastructure that is being grown in the city, and this is with our partnership with the private sector community and with the citizens. That has been a vital key in helping us to drop the amount of shootings in the city. They dropped 10% last year. Robberies in the city dropped 14% last year. That was the second highest motivator homicide, so we're very, very fortunate to see that occurring. Another thing that does vex us, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, is our challenge with repeat offenders. And a repeat offender by statute in the state is someone that has been convicted of a felony 3 or more times. And I will tell you that is a very high bar to meet. It is very difficult to get there. And of the arrests we made last year, we arrested 889 individuals in the city of Atlanta that met the definition of a repeat offender, of having been convicted of 3 or more felonies. And those 889 individuals accounted for 28,966 prior arrests, and they accounted for 6,039 felony convictions among them. 33% of them had a weapon on them, a firearm, at the time that the Atlanta Police Department took them into custody. And also, what is also very disturbing is that 57% of them were either on probation or parole. And so the work that to be done collectively as a state, targeting the repeat offenders, is an area we would ask this body to look to. And we want to thank the district attorney, and we also want to thank the mayor, as well as the sheriff of Fulton County and the Police Foundation for creating a repeat offender unit and then actually moving that entity within half a block of the Fulton County Courthouse. We're working very closely to speed to the courtroom information on individuals that will be appearing for bond, will be appearing for a sentencing hearing, or other court actions, so the judges and the prosecutors are aware that who they have before them is someone that has a high level of proclivity to commit violence and harm in our city, and not just harm in Atlanta, Georgia. They move across jurisdictional boundaries to harm in those areas. So I do want to make sure we do not forget the repeat offender influence that we're seeing in the areas as we combat gangs, guns, and drugs. And then just to thank our partners, members of this committee. We are very fortunate that the Georgia State Patrol, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation are key partners of fighting crime right here in the city of Atlanta. And we also want to thank the FBI for their work, the ATF, the United States Postal Service, the DEA. We are reestablishing our partnerships with them and placing officers on their task force to be able to quickly share information to protect our state and protect the city of Atlanta. The mayor is committed to public safety, and we are going to fight crime smartly, and we're going to use the size and the expertise of the Atlanta Police Department to do so, but we can't do it alone. We need smart policies and laws. We need partnerships in the community and across the aisle, and we need the full work of everyone that has taken an oath to serve. The oath is bipartisan. The oath is not political, and so we hope everyone knows the Atlanta Police Department is committed to that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I hope that is some helpful information to this body, and certainly open to any questions or inquiries that you or others may have.
Thank you, Chief. That was an excellent overview. We appreciate the good work, and having been a part of this myself for a long time, watching the relationships that you are establishing and working with all your counterparts, and many of those are in the room, I'm looking in the back right now, is wonderful, because for a while we did not have that, and I think this is only going to be solved when we're all working together in the same direction, so we appreciate that, and especially your focus on gangs, and it's something that I talk about often here. And you know well from your background that, estimates are somewhere between 70 and 90% of all violent crimes. All violent crimes are from criminal street gangs now. And we have to cut the head off the snake, just similar to J. Edgar Hoover did many years ago, public enemy #1 with the mafia. And take them down, and I appreciate the work that's going on. I also want to recognize Mr. Peter Amon is here, who I know leads many of the initiatives for the City of Atlanta. Thank you, Peter, for coming. The last thing that I would do, the question I'd like to ask you is, I know you're using both the Formalytics product as well as the repeat offender, I think you call that APIN in the city. Sure. Can you talk about that and the technology that you're using? Because I'm going to be bringing that before this committee and appropriations to fund that statewide, and how you think that would be helpful?
Yes, sir. We do use APIN and a number of other tools to be able to track the individuals. And as you know, the state, I believe, has an effective statute to combat gangs, which is the gang statute. So APIN is designed to be able to follow the elements that are needed to prosecute a gang case and ensure that it is aligned. So we are building that from the moment we're putting data into the system. And it also allows us to be able to quickly connect with other agencies. If we have an individual that we're looking at here in Atlanta, but they may be active in South Fulton or Gwinnett or Cobb, if that agency also is a user of that platform, we are able to immediately know that there's a connection. So we're able to share information in a manner that goes much more quickly. We don't have to pick up the phone and call a lot of people, send a lot of emails. We know that there's an agency here in the state that also has interest in that person or may have information to help us build our case, because a successful prosecution in one county impacts the safety in other counties. And so it is a platform that allows us to talk to multiple agencies. It's a platform that allows us to gather information that's needed in the courtroom and for the whole system to be focused on a gang prosecution.
Fantastic. Questions from the committee members? I've got a question from Senator C.
Maybe I'll start with a comment.
Use the microphone, please.
And I take my mask now. I think I heard you start by saying 21 years of service. We have that in common.
Right.
Not a question, just hearing and making a point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for your
For your
service.
service. Thank you for keeping us safe.
Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you so much for your service. You quoted a number of statistics about the change in crime. Would you be able to present that to us in paper so that we can reference that in the future?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Chief.
And I think I've got a copy of that updated report, but anything you bring, if you'll just have it over, I'll make sure Ally gets that out, not just to our committee, but we'll send it out to the rest of the Senate as well.
Right.
Any other questions from the committee members? Before we let the chief go, we know he's got a couple of his team members here, officers, as well as we've got a bunch of people that are either current or former law enforcement and or representing the numerous agencies. So let's give all of them a round of applause for our finest. Thank you, Chief. Have a great day. We
Thank you, sir.
appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
We're going to move on to our bills for today. We're going to go in numerical order. Senator Robertson, you want to just stay where you are to present your bills? We're going to begin with Senate Bill 36. For those who are looking to speak for or against this legislation, there's a sign-up sheet right up here in the front on the right. Please take a moment to sign in now so we can get a copy of that. And as I always ask people, please keep your comments clear and concise and directed to the bill from which we are talking about. So with that in mind, I will turn it over to our Vice Chairman, Senator Randy Robertson, our Majority Whip for Senate Bill 36.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 36 should look familiar to everybody that was here last year. It ended up, I think it ended up on the table toward the end of the session. All it does, it's really simple. It addresses an issue within sex trafficking, and what it does is it takes pimping, which is an individual who traffics in another human being for sexual purposes, and individuals arrested for that would be charged with a felony. Currently, if they're arrested, they are charged with a misdemeanor. And the second is pandering, which is the individual out on the street who is purchasing sex from someone who is being trafficked. And the primary purpose of this is to destroy the demand, thereby doing away with the necessity of individuals, hopefully, as much as we can, trafficking in primarily females and young girls on the streets of Georgia. And I would ask committee members to support the legislation.
Thank you, Senator. Your work on this issue and others is extraordinary. I think it also works very closely with First Lady Marty Kemp's Grace Commission and Governor Kemp's commitment to end human trafficking. Do we have questions from the committee members on Senate Bill 36? I've got a question from Senator Kim Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, can I say your name here? I don't know. Roberts?
Robertson?
Yeah, it's Roberts.
No, I didn't know if I can say your name. I don't say your number.
Yeah, no, you can say my name.
In committee meetings, you may use full names. In the floor, we only use
Right. Thank you.
nondescript.
So you reference this bill as being about helping to cut down on sex trafficking, which is something that we all agree on. Just help me. You're an expert in the code. Is there a difference between sex trafficking? Do we have a particular code section for sex trafficking, or do we consider all pimping to be trafficking? Like, is there an aggravated? Do you understand what I'm asking in terms of like, do you have to have a certain number of people that you are in charge of pimping in order to it count as sex trafficking, or is it just all
No,
sex trafficking?
it's sex trafficking can be a single act. And what the pimp, if you will, they could have one individual that they require and force out onto the street or into a hotel room or into a modeling agency or other place of business and require them to have sex with customers for money. And so they are trafficking that single individual. But trafficking can be a single individual or it can be several individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the committee members for the author? I got a question from Senator Dugan.
Senator Jackson, I kind of thought where you were going with the question was, is all prostitution trafficking?
That was my question.
All prostitution is not trafficking because not all prostitution requires a pimp to be involved. Some individuals choose to sell themselves for whatever reason, whether it's drugs, mental health issues, things of that nature. Not every individual, I mean, all the situations are extremely sad, but not every individual who is out on the street or in the places I described are being managed or forced into sex trafficking by a pimp.
Okay.
Some of them are.
Thank you. That's just what I thought her question was. Thank you.
Other questions? We've got 3 people. We have one more question. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. Senator Robertson, can you help explain to me lines 43, or sorry, line 42 through 45? So my understanding of this is that you're defining the term sex worker based on the code section 1669, which is the definition of the act of prostitution.
No, the purpose of defining sex worker, and I think Senator Jones may remember this from judiciary of last year, is it was to clear up who exactly we were talking about under the 18 years of age, because there was some concern about younger individuals being involved in the pandering side. And so that was, we cleared up the definition of the individual person who we were talking about is the actual sex worker who would be under the age of 18.
Right, but you do so by referencing code section 1669, which defines prostitution, and by definition of law, you have to be over the age of 18.
16610, is that where you're looking?
I'm looking on line 43. So I'll start line 42. I'll read it out loud for you. For
Yeah.
the purposes of this
Oh, no,
subsection.
I'm looking at that line. I don't have Title 1669 in front of me. Do you want to read that?
I do have it.
Sure.
Sorry. So 1669 says a person 18 years of age or older commits the offense of prostitution when he or she performs or offers consent to perform a sexual act, including but not limited to a number of things. So by definition, in the state of Georgia, a person who is charged with prostitution cannot be under the age of 18. But you're
No,
defining.
that's not true.
You want to see it?
No. You just said a person under the age of 18 cannot be,
Charged with prostitution because because code section that you referenced, 1669, defines prostitution, a person 18 years age of or older is a part of that code section.
okay, I think if you'll read 44 says a person convicted of any of the offenses enumerated in code sections 16610 through 16612 when such offense involves the conduct of a sex worker under the age of 18. All those lines define a different penalty for someone charged with that based on, if you go to line 47, it lays out that right there. I think, so your concern is that you feel that, you're talking above age and below age?
Right, so I'm concerned that by defining the term sex worker as being based on prostitution, I'm concerned that we're criminalizing children, right? By creating this term sex worker that applies to people who are underage, which in Georgia right now, we understand them to be victims, right? We understand anyone who is under the age of 18 who is engaged in prostitution, we understand them to be victims, and we say that you cannot be charged with prostitution. So I'm concerned that we are criminalizing young people by creating that term using that definition.
Existing language.
Yeah, this is existing language, and I do appreciate your concern, but that's not what this does at all.
Senator Jackson, I think just to clarify, if I could, if you look at what you're seeing from lines 44 down, only the things that are underlined are new language. Everything else is already existing in code, right?
I'm talking specifically about lines 42 through 43, which is where we learn about the term sex worker. And the term sex worker, it says, it has the same meaning as that is which is provided in Code 1669. Code 1669 says that you have to be over the age of 18 in order to be charged with the act of prostitution.
Okay.
So therefore, in my understanding, you can't have a person who is a sex worker under the age of 18. These things would no longer apply.
But based on what you just said, you're absolutely right. Where you jump over here and it says a person under the age, that is the victim that is pandered. Therefore, if I am the panderer and I go out and I attempt to purchase sex from someone 18 and older, the penalty for me is different than if I go out to purchase sex from someone
Sure, of
younger
course.
than that. That's all this does. This maintains that the person under the age is the sex worker who is a victim.
It's fine. We can agree to disagree. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Dugan and our legislative counsel, Ms. Dalday, do you want to weigh in here for a moment?
She can tell me how I'm wrong in just a second. What I think the term of what a sex worker is defined in 16-6-9. It is not defined in 16-6-10. But if it's a person under the age of 18 that is doing the description of the act that's covered in 16-6-9, and they're under the age of 18, then they are the victim and not committing a criminal act. So the other way to do this would be describe what a sex worker is in 16-6-10 it's the same side of the same coin, or the opposite side of the same coin. All 16-6-9 doing in this context is putting a definition of what a sex worker is. If you put it in -10 as a minor, they would not be covered under a sex worker, but it's describing the act that they were forced to do.
Right, so I would recommend. May I please? Originally, the language it said a person under the age of 18. I would respectfully request that we refer to the person as opposed to a sex worker. I'm simply asking that we do not refer to children as sex workers, because that's what, on line 45, that's what you have done. That's all, that's really all I'm requesting, so
And I absolutely appreciate your concern. This is the reason that was changed is because this went before judiciary last year, and the confusion was the person being victimized, or was the person victimizing? Therefore, we changed it to sex worker on the advice of the attorneys on that committee.
Sure.
So it would separate, so we knew who we were talking about, as opposed to who the panderer was and who was the individual being exploited. And that's what this language does.
Thank you. I see we have a bunch of people in the room. There's plenty of seats if anybody would like to sit down and take a load off. And we can do this like we do in Christmas Eve at church. Everybody can squish in a little bit and make room. We're going to hear from a few folks. First, we'll have Miss Juliana McConnell from Street Grace. And if you are not familiar with Street Grace, you should be. What an awesome organization working to end human trafficking and support the victims. So thank you for all the wonderful work you do.
And here.
You got it.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I'm Juliana McCollum, and I have been involved with Street Grace since the day it was created, when a group of churches came together in a faith-based effort to end the trafficking of. At that time, it was mainly focused on our young children that were being trafficked for sex. Our president and CEO could not be here today. She had a death in the family, so she asked me. I've got a handout that I wanted to present to you at the end and just hit just a couple of the highlights and the message that she had prepared for you today. Sex trafficking exists because there is a strong consumer base of buyers willing to purchase and exploit our victims. By reducing the number of buyers, we can shrink the amount of money flowing into the sex trafficking market and thereby cripple the market itself. In plain terms, the clear way to end trafficking is to end the demand and to target our buyers. Despite driving the illegal sex market with their money and their criminal behavior, buyers are far less frequently arrested and rarely receive meaningful punishment. This bill will make buyers think twice before buying another person by increasing the penalties for buying sex. To our citizens, the legislature will be sending a message. This change sends a clear message. We protect our vulnerable and place accountability where it belongs, on the criminals who make sex trafficking profitable. To our frontline defenders, it firmly establishes that arresting and prosecuting buyers is a priority because our legislature is serious about ending the demand for trafficking. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your comments. We've got next up Mr. Taylor Hawkins from Frontline Policy, another wonderful organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, we appreciate Senator Robertson for bringing this bill back. And obviously, as an organization who one of our fundamental issues is human dignity, this whole market that we're talking about here today obviously is a heinous one, and so we strongly support Senator Robertson's changes, which will not only enable law enforcement to go after them, but we hope and trust cripple the entire market with the way it attacks buyers. Also wanted to answer a question that has not been asked this year, but was brought up several times last year in case it was still lingered in anyone's mind, and that is, does this actually have an effect on the traffickers themselves? And as we heard from the executive director of Street Grace last year, an organization we partner with and very proud of the work that they've been doing for many years, the traffickers in these scenarios have extremely well-attuned underground places of information that they go to online and other places to determine the exact nature of penalties. And there have been recorded instances, and law enforcement are very well aware of this, where within a day of the changes to penalties, that marketplace is made aware of that, and so the traffickers take their business operations elsewhere, and so we're able to cripple the industry not only from attacking the buyer's angle, but also in increasing the penalty for those who are trafficking. That is something that is broadly circulated throughout the market. So we're excited about this piece of legislation. Look forward to the way that it will positively impact our state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, and last but not least, speak on Senate Bill 36, Ms. Maisie Lynn with the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. Thank you so much for hearing from us on this bill. I'd just like to bring you all a little bit of history on this legislation. For instance, just because of the conversation that was happening just now, I will address that to some extent. When this bill passed out of the Senate, it did not include the sex worker definition, and in the version that's posted on the website, that was the House committee substitute. That definition was also never included. The final version of this bill last year was LC 49-1020S, and it, after it was reported out of the House committee, it did not move any farther. So when I testified on this bill last year, the issue of the sex worker definition was not something that was on the table that we were discussing in any of the published versions of the bill. I would also just want to take you back a couple years to 2017, which is when in House Bill 341, former House Representative Reeves raised some of the mandatory minimums in 16, 6, 10, 11, and 12. This is when we started having required prison time of 24 hours on some of these charges, like keeping a place of prostitution, which is 16, 6, 10, the same for pimping and pandering, 16, 6, 11, and 12. So that's July of 2017. Come forward to July of 2019, and we see two bills come through. One was Senator Strickland's bill, Senate Bill 158, which was the Anti-Human Trafficking Protective Response Act, an omnibus bill that did a lot of work in this area. That's when we see what Senator Jackson was talking about earlier, where we adjust to remove 17-year-olds from among those who can violate the prostitution code. It's also when we raise the age that you see in this version of Senate Bill 36 at line 46, we raise the age from 16 to 18 with respect to those special victims. At that time also, rather than having a punishment that was either incarceration or a fine, it becomes combined and becomes mandated that you have both incarceration and a fine. That same year, over in the House, House Bill 281, we see the enhancements. I mentioned in 2017, we now have a 24-hour minimum sentence. In 2019, that goes up to 72 hours. And in that case also, in that bill also, the second time someone is convicted of these crimes, it becomes a felony. So 2019, July of 2019, are when the last round of enhancements go into effect in our state in this in these code sections, which, you know, obviously we can do the math on that and realize that since that time, a lot has happened in our court system, but not in the good way. Cases have been slowed because of the pandemic. They've not been processed. And so the idea that these enhanced penalties are deterrent hasn't even played out for the enhancements that you passed in 2019. We don't know whether or not your enhancements have impacted because they haven't really been applied. Cases take time to get through the system, and arrests that happen after July of 2019 are still being processed in some of our courts. As a threshold matter, our organization has great concern whenever your body is legislating mandatory minimum sentences, as is happening in this bill. Not only do we have a concern about mandatory minimum sentences, but we have a concern that you've left the discretion not with the judge who presides over the case, but with the prosecutors who are prosecuting the case. We would respectfully ask that you consider leaving any discretion with the court. In order to do that, there are 3 places in the bill where some strikes would have to happen at lines 27, 28, 40, 41, and 56 and 57. It's the same language in each situation that allows for the judge to depart from the mandatory minimum sentence when the prosecuting attorney and defendant have agreed to a sentence that is below such mandatory minimum. I'm here to say that me and my brethren and sistren are rarely, never, going to disagree with a downward departure on sentencing. So by requiring us to agree with the state about this, you're basically putting the state in the seat of the arbiter of the prosecution, which really is a seat that should be held by the judge. So if you are going to maintain the mandatory minimum aspect of this bill, we would ask that you maintain that discretion with the court, not with the executive branch. In fact, in the language of the bill, just before those lines I mentioned, it purports to allow it to be the court's discretion to depart from that mandatory minimum sentence, but that is a fiction when it really rests within the hands of the prosecutor. Those are our main concerns about the bill and the history that I can offer you. Obviously, we would oppose this bill and ask that you table it at least for more conversation on the mandatory minimums and potentially to clear up this definition confusion that Senator Jackson has raised.
Thank you for your comments, Maisie. As always, I appreciate you being very thorough. I don't see any questions. I think you're good to go. And I appreciate your candid feedback always, even when we're not always on the same sheet of music. Okay, I think there's been some discussion while we were hearing from some folks, and I'm going to recognize Senator Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some language that I think we'll get to both of you are trying to do the same thing. We're just talking about verbiage right now. So see if this works. Starting on line 42. For the purposes of this subsection, victims of sexual exploitation means a person under 18 years of age who performs, offers, or consents to perform sexual acts, including but not limited to, and then there's a list of sexual acts that would fall into that, period on that one. And then when I would go to 45, I would strike victim, a person, sex worker under the age of 18 shall, I would put victim of sexual exploitation. Under 18.
And that was an informative.
Hold on, she's moving my cord in my back right now. Say again.
I was just answering a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that was in the form of an amendment, I believe, Senator.
Yeah, it
Was that
was.
right?
That is
Excellent.
correct,
That
Mr.
was an
Chairman.
excellent amendment. I think Senator Jackson wanted to second that amendment. Okay. Further discussion about that amendment. I think this clarifies the language to give everybody the confidence to know that what we're putting down equals the outcome, and the author is okay with that, correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Appreciate the Legis Council.
We've got a motion from Senator Dugan and a second from Senator Jackson. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I will never sit in this seat again.
They're actually assigned seats now, Senator. Thank you, though. Okay, very good work. Thank you for the feedback from all the members. At this point, we have a new committee substitute as amended in front of us. What is the will of the committee? What is the will of the?
Move to pass.
Move to pass from Senator Dugan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, I had a second from Senator Rick Williams. He beat you, Senator Payne. Further discussion. Is there any further discussion from the committee members about this bill? Seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. All right, raise your hand if you are a no, please. I've got 3 no's, Senator Jones, Senator Jackson, and C. And I've got a yes from Senator Williams, Senator Robertson, Senator Dugan, and Senator Payne. This bill passes. Best of luck in the Rules Committee, Senator. Okay, we're going to move on to our next bill. Next bill is Senate Bill 37. We will turn it back over to the bill's author, Senator Robertson.
Senator Bill, SB 37 is another bill that we're all very aware of, that we dealt with last year. And we did this working in partnership with the Georgia Sheriff's Association. What SB 37 does simply is it requires that a candidate for the office of sheriff be a certified officer or be post-certified and in good standing with the Georgia Post Council at the time of qualifying for sheriff. And so this would make sure that those counties, the chief law enforcement officer in those counties are qualified to hold the position once elected.
Makes perfect sense, Senator. Do I have questions from the committee members? Seeing none, we've got our very own Terry Norris, who's signed up to speak, head of the Georgia Sheriff's Association. Terry, would you like to come up to the podium and talk to us?
I will, Mr. Chairman, but it was very well explained. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer.
All right, don't talk us out of it.
Yes, sir.
Take a moment to commend the great work that Terry Norris has done for a great many years down here representing our sheriffs, and his counterpart for the Police Chiefs Association, Mr. Butch Ayers, in the back as well. Appreciate all the great work you both do. Any other questions from the committee members? If not, what is the will of the committee?
Do pass.
Oh, I think Senator Williams beat you. We got a motion to pass from him and a second from Senator Jackson. Any further discussion of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. This bill passes unanimously. Best of luck in the Rules Committee once again, Senator. And last but certainly not least, another important bill, Senate Bill 38. Back to you, Senator Robertson.
Probably the least controversial bill I have today, SB 38. SB 38 makes a small adjustment to Georgia law. Currently in my district in Hamilton, Georgia, we have a speed camera in front of our high school. And the purpose of these speed cameras are to slow vehicles down when they're traveling through the school zones during school hours. These cameras are established with permitting through the Georgia Department of Transportation on the property of the county. And so what we've done is cleared up the legislation to point out, if you'll look on line 13 of the legislation, it will now read, prior to the placement of a device within a school zone, the local governing body of the county or municipality whose law enforcement agency shall be authorized to enforce the speed limit where, and then continues on, an automated traffic enforcement safety device is to be placed. That is the only change in that, and Mr. Chair, I'll welcome any questions.
Yes, Senator, if you could just help refresh everyone's memory here. The roads of which are in front of, behind, and next to schools, who is the jurisdiction that is responsible for keeping people safe and citing those who are breaking the law?
In the case of this, it would be county and municipal law enforcement officers.
Very good, thank you. Questions from the committee members? I've got a question from Senator Dugan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other side of that issue is, why are there adjusting speed limits on those roads? What's the purpose?
Why are they adjusting?
It's a leading question.
I'm sorry.
I
Yes,
got it.
sir.
The reason they're there is to provide protection and safety for the schools.
Absolutely, and that's the reason they're only operating during school hours. And I think they're, in the past, some districts have followed Georgia law in accordance with the flashing school zone signs to, if there's some unique opportunity or situation where the school has to be, something's going on at the school that allows them to activate the flashing lights, then it would be operational then too. But 100% the purpose is to protect the children and staff moving in and out of the schools.
So at the end of the day, what does this really do?
It slows people down, it slows vehicles down and saves lives.
I was meaning, where does the money go?
Oh, this has nothing to do with the money. That's entirely up to the contract that is signed by the municipalities, the county governments, and the supplier of the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions from the committee members? Senator Kim Jackson.
Thank you. Senator Robertson, do you know what type of violation, if someone were to get a speeding ticket from this camera, is this a civil violation or would it be a criminal violation?
Currently, Georgia law has it down, I believe, as a civil violation.
Because it's coming from a camera, is that why?
Yeah, because it's, it's a civil violation, but it does provide an opportunity for due process.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's coming from the camera.
May I follow up?
Same as passing a school bus camera. It's a civil violation. Yeah.
And also, Senator Robertson, can you just give some background to explain to me why would schools and school boards, why is this an issue? Like, why are we needing to modify this? Are there school boards, are there schools that are refusing to put these cameras in front of their schools and denying that opportunity? And if so, why don't schools want these cameras in front of their schools?
Yeah, the cases that have been brought to me, there are a couple of school boards throughout the state, maybe more, that they don't want the cameras in front of their schools because they don't get any of the money.
So this is about money.
It is. The schools want revenue-based policing, and the municipalities and the counties want safe streets.
Senator,
Yes, ma'am.
respectfully, I think that's disparaging of school boards and of schools to suggest that
Yes,
they're
ma'am.
not
Well,
also
if-
interested in the
if
protection
somebody-
and safety of children.
if
I think that's
somebody-
disparaging.
If somebody would have asked me the question and read the same research news articles and other things I've read, I think they would have known what my answer would be. It's not disparaging when it's factual.
All right, let's continue moving on. I think just to clarify, and why I certainly support Senate Bill 38, is today our finest, our law enforcement members who are sheriffs, deputies, police officers, they might be working for the Georgia State Police or any other agency for that fact, are responsible for patrolling our streets and making sure people are not speeding, they're not committing other reckless offenses, and they have the ability to set up speed zones if they need to. They could pull people over for erratic driving, and we have a process that follows that. And I think that's exactly where it belongs, with our police departments, who are governed by our local cities and counties. So, All right, with that in mind, there is nobody signed up to speak for or against this bill from the audience today, so I will open it up to the will of the committee. I have a move to pass from Senator Rick Williams. Do I have a second? All right, how about we modify that to a move to table this for further discussion? How about that? Okay, I think that we're going to do that. We'll give it a little more time for the committee members to have some discussion offline, so we can see if there's a way to bring some more consensus onto this bill. All right, well, thank you for your time. A quick update for scheduling. We will not have a committee meeting tomorrow. However, we will have another committee meeting next Wednesday, of which we're going to have several bills. We've got a lot coming through. In fact, I'm talking to a few of you on the committee about your bills. So please be aware of that. We'll try and get the agenda out early in order to give you the opportunity to review those bills. And if you have any questions about either the bills that are coming or subcommittees, et cetera, please let me know well in advance. And I do want to remind, if we have any updates to bills, to always address the bill's author first and to have those 24 hours in advance. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and this meeting is hereby adjourned.